Hello and welcome to the Merchant's Way. Now, I think it was on our last program, but even if it wasn't, we've made a very big thing about us being the platform for so many things, which we are. And having done so, it would be really remiss of me not to share some of what's been going on. And I make no apologies for this, by the way. Now, for anyone who was with us on in the introductory program, when I located where we are, we're in the county of Lincolnshire. Now, Lincolnshire is our second largest county in England. In medieval times, Lincolnshire was the richest county in the land. Today, we're a spent force. But nonetheless, though we're a spent force, we still have some incredibly interesting historical sites, art history. We have some of the most fabulous buildings here. Now, there's a place in England called the Cotswolds, a wonderful area. They too were built on the proceeds of wool. Now the difference is, the Cotswolds are lots of small towns, but they have continuity. They're all stone built, really charming. It's what's used to draw people into England. Now many years ago, all of that was nearly obliterated. It was going to be flattened to the ground. It was considered a hovel. And there were people who said, no, we're not going to stand for this, we're going to protest, which they did. And today, and this didn't just happen overnight, over many years, now this is one of the most sought after places in the country. You know, when people think of England, that's where they think of. Now, the reason I say all of this to you, it's because on this side of the country, it's what I term Constable country, the big skies. The landscape is not as undulating. It's vast. It's a farming area. So if you look at any of the old paintings, the Masters, Constable, that's what you're seeing. East Anglia, and we also verge into East Midlands. So we've got the very big dramatic skies. And I mean, you really have to experience them to realize what I'm talking about. There are times you're driving towards the county from the south or from the north equally, and you see these rather thunderous skies, very dramatic. So it is an interesting place because because I'm aware of it, it's got a very medieval look towards it, but charming. Now, the county's Lincolnshire, then we're just outside of an ancient market town of Grantham. Now, basically Grantham again used to be hugely important. Today it's a spent force, but it still has an awful lot which could be used to bring it back to its feet. Now, admittedly, I think I've said to you before, it is this building that I'm not from this part of the country. It was this building, though, that brought my wife and I to this part of the world. And then we started to obviously absorb the surrounding areas and so forth. And we've got some real gems. Within 15 miles from south of here, we have a town, Stamford. Now, Stamford, it's a stone-built town. It was the first listed town in England. And in Stamford also, you have the famous Burghley House from the horse trials. It's got to be the finest Elizabethan house in the land. It's when Cecil, Lord Cecil, who was Elizabeth I's Chancellor, and he did so many good deeds for her, she rewarded him with Stamford, or rather the area, and he went about building his seat, this wonderful, magnificent house, Burghley. Now, again, approximately 9 miles from us, we've got Grimthorpe Castle. Absolutely fabulous. Now, Grimthorpe, there's a tower. One of its tower, it's called the King John's Tower. That really goes back to, I would imagine off the top of my head, around about 13th century. It's King John's Tower. The rest of it has been built onto it. Now, if you know of the architect Vanbrugh, I think, for me, it has one of the finest Vanbrugh halls. You will see a wonderful one at Blenheim Palace. You'll see another wonderful hall of Vanbrug's work at Castle Howard. But for me, Grimthorpe is very special. It's very intimate. And it's a fabulous building. And then on north of us, on the other side of Grantham, we have Belton House. Now Belton, I shall never forget the first time I went into Belton. I literally was stopped in my tracks in the hallway. I could feel the symmetry of this building that surrounded me. It really is. When it comes to an English country house, though it's obviously heavily Dutch influenced, but you see, that's what England's about. All of the different influences coming in, the homogenization. And we draw from everything. Now, down to the smaller places, and these are second to none. There's a village just down the road, 3 miles from us. And incidentally, like the Cotswolds I mentioned before, they're like sort of, the towns are about 2 to 3 miles apart. And the reason for that, incidentally, it's as far as livestock would be walked before they were rested. So we have a very similar thing here. And these are all stone villages as well. Now, we have a building called Boothby Pagnell. Now, when I first came to this area, it wasn't long after we had the Doomsday exhibition in London. And Boothby Pagnell was what was used to exemplify the most important small manor house in the country. Absolutely fabulous. Today it's just an eye catch in someone's garden. It hasn't been lived in for a very long time. But people should know about it, and you are able to visit it. You knock on the resident's door at the big Victorian house and you yourself come to see the house, and they will let you. And you know, this should be advertised because our taxpayers' money goes into things like re-roofing it and keeping the weather out and keeping it in a good state of repair in its unlived-in state. But nonetheless, the public should know, because I tell you, it's got wonderful ribbed vaulted ceilings, fireplaces. The architectural language really sings for the period. Obviously there's ourselves, Ellis Manor House. Well, look, we're second to none. And I think you're getting that from from the weekly bits which we're doing. So I will continue on this vein so you can get a feel of this area we're in. Because though I've mentioned snippets of it, I've not really introduced it properly. So stay with us and we shall carry this forward. And I just hope you'll find it quite interesting and you will come to visit this wonderful area that we're in. Thank you again for joining us. See you on our next voyage. Goodbye now.